We're going to talk about my setup to install Openshift on my home lab. So my home lab consists of a Dell R900. That's an old server that used to be ran in a data center. Picked mine up off of eBay. Has 128 gig of RAM, 24 CPU, got 4 terabytes of disk on it. One of the best things though is that these Dell R900s, when they were sold, were packaged with a VMware license. So I was able to download an ISO from VMware, an installation software from VMware that was specifically made for this server. It's an old version 5.5.0, but they will give you a legitimate license for 5.5.0. They've moved on to other things and they'll give you this license, so I have a legitimate VMware environment here to build all my VMs in. I built my DNS on a different server just so I could wipe out this test server as much as I want and not have to worry about that. Now, why did I mention DNS? Well, Openshift is highly dependent on DNS. My DNS servers I go over in a different video, but the short story is that my DNS server is on 200, so my resolve.conf has to have the name server 200 in the list. My domain I'm using is pierce.home. You can see where I've got my VMs in my DNS entries here. Note the star here. Essentially anything that I type with pierce.home will get sent to my info box. So I can put any kind of URL in a web browser that ends in pierce.home and it will get picked up by this rules in my DNS and sent to my info box. The way Openshift works, the master controls everything. These are representing my VMs, by the way. The Ansible is used to do all the installation, so it's not used actually when the cluster is running. Master controls everything. The infra is a router, and then the apps are what actually runs your application. So here I have a page where I show the URL for getting the preparations done. And here is that web page. Now, one thing I got to warn you about is that Openshift documentation, it's kind of like trying to follow a Christmas tree from the top down. You never quite know which branch to follow in their documentation. After reading and trying a bunch of stuff, I finally realized that 99% of what's in the documentation you don't need. It's for doing customizations after you've learned what's going on. Ignore 90% of the stuff for your first installation. All they really want you to do is install Ansible, which here's the packages to do that, right? They want you on your Ansible box to get a repo. The repo is where software is installed. A repo activated. Deactivate another repo that gives them trouble, I suppose, and then basically clone the Ansible runbooks. Now, what Ansible is, it's essentially it's a large configurable script. It takes these runbooks, or playbooks I believe they call them, and it will do all the installation on your other servers. So really just worry about your Ansible box first. Just get your DNS set up, then get your Ansible set up, and then everything runs from your Ansible. Now, one of the prerequisites on this Ansible thing is to make sure it can SSH to all of your other boxes. So here I'm actually on my laptop, SSH, root. So I'm on my Ansible box, and here if I SSH to my master, it will log in as root without any prompting. That's a requirement, because what Ansible will do then, based on what the runbooks are telling it, or sorry, the playbooks tell it, is it will log on to this server and it will install all the software for you. It's pretty automated. So like I said, ignore most of the instructions. Just get the Ansible on, get the playbooks on there, and then you end up running them. So I've got my SSH keys. I have a different video on setting that up for all of them. Here in my root, I do not have my Ansible playbooks down yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do a get to download them. And so it's going to get, and it's pulling all that down. Okay. Now, this is another window I have on my Ansible server. I'm in etc Ansible, and Ansible runs using a host file. It's spelled the same way as the hosts that tells your machine what host names and IPs are. So yes, you probably have heard that kind of file, but this one is in a different one. It's in etc Ansible, and this is where you actually configure Ansible to do stuff. And the really important thing is that you are defining host as member of certain software groups. The infra node configured, each one of the apps as configured as a node compute. And you can combine these things. If you want to run everything off of a single server, you simply have the server name here and you include all the group names here, and it will do everything for you. All these group names are already set up in the books that you download.